Vayigash is such an amazing parsha. I love this story of Joseph and his brothers. He reveals himself to his brothers. Joseph reveals himself to Yehuda and all the brothers after a very intense conversation, if you can call it that, in his palace in Egypt when they didn't know. The brothers had no idea they were speaking to Joseph. They thought Joseph was either dead or a slave somewhere and they hadn't found him. And this whole time, Joseph knew that he was talking to his brothers, and he had devised this whole strategy to give them an atonement for the sins that they committed against him, and to also fulfill the prophecy that he had of his dream that they would bow down to him and all his brothers, and then subsequently his brothers and his father. So it begins, Vayigash elav Yehuda, and approached to him. Vayigash is approached, elav, to him, Yehuda. Vayomer, and he said, Bi Adoni, Yedaber na abdecha, davar be'aznei Adoni. Let me speak. Let me speak a word to my master. Your servant will speak a word in the ears of my master. Ve'al yichar apecha ve'avdecha, and do not let your anger flare against your servant. Ki chamocha, because like you are, kefaro. You're like Paro. You're like the king. You're like Donald Trump, and I'm talking to Donald Trump right now, and that's a scary prospect because I'm going to ask you some very serious stuff right now, and I'm going to say some very serious things, and I don't want you to get mad at me. There's a few interpretations of some sort of extraneous words and weird phraseology here with the Hebrew, and that's where a lot of the story comes into play. This is such an incredibly beautiful story and dialogue that our sages tell us that the angels descended just to listen to these words and to watch what was about to transpire. It's out of a Marvel movie right now. So when the brothers saw that Binyamin had been caught red-handed and had stolen, appeared that he had stolen the goblet of Joseph, everybody stood aside except Judah. Judah had guaranteed his safety, so he stood up and stood in between them and got on his knees and started begging Joseph to free him and that he should take his place. Also, Judah is the king. He's the Lion of Judah. That's where we get kingship from in Judaism and Yiddishkeit. That's where all the kings come from, is Judah. And he was like a king. So all the brothers were like, okay, we have no business getting involved right here. Two kings are going to duke it out. Let's see what happens. Also, the brothers were a little bit angry at each other. They had no agreement or plan. Judah was the only one that had prepared this articulate plea and course of action. It was a three-pronged approach. Joseph was ready for three possible courses. First, he would present a well-reasoned argument as to why Joseph should let Benjamin go. But when we analyze the text, we're going to see that it contains a veiled threat that he was ready to engage Joseph in battle. He was ready to kill Joseph if he didn't release Binyamin. If neither of these two courses of action would be successful, however, he was ready with his ultimate weapon, prayer. It would get him out of his predicament if he would just pray once to Hashem. First thing he did was he said, please, your excellency, my master, let me speak a word in your ear. Normally, this was never done. A commoner would enter the palace, especially for some sort of court or litigation, and the king would be behind a circle of the most noble aristocrats and all of his advisors, and you would, from the outside of the circle, make your plea. However, he was requesting, I want to pass everyone and come straight to you myself and talk to you. It was very unusual. That's what the words bring out. When you read the words, it says, Yedaber na bi avdecha be'aznei. Vayomer bi Adoni. Yedaber na avdecha davar be'aznei Adoni. Let me speak into your ears directly. No, I don't want anybody in between us. Ki chamocha kefaro, ve'al yichar apecha al avdecha. Do not let your anger flare against me because you're like Pharaoh. What does that even mean? What that means is he's saying, you're like Paro. Ki chamocha kefaro means you're like Paro, and we have a tradition. When a king loses his temper, because I'm going to say some things that are going to make you very mad. When a king loses his temper, he loses his kingship. So you better not get angry, otherwise we're going to take you out. Another interpretation is you're like Paro, and let your servant speak a word in your ears, is let your servant Menashe, your son, who's your servant and running your household, let him speak a word in your ears. Let him tell you what actually happened, because I know that man framed my brother Binyamin, and he put the chalice in my brother's backpack. There's no way that my brother stole that chalice from you. Another interpretation is, Ki chamocha kefaro, you're like Paro. When we first came down to Egypt, we thought you were a noble, God-fearing man. But now we see you're just like Paro. You're an idolatrous imbecile. Yidaber na davar. Yidaber na avdecha davar be'azne adoni. Let me speak another interpretation. It sounds like you haven't heard. So let me speak this one loud and clear in your ears, because obviously you didn't hear. But did you know about the Shechem massacre? Yeah. What happened there was Dinah, our sister, was violated by Shechem. So you know what we did? We massacred and destroyed the entire city and every inhabitant in it, okay? And Dinah, who wasn't even destined to inherit the land of Israel and be one of the members of the 12 tribe, we defended her to the hilt. What do you think we're going to do to get Binyamin back when he's destined to be one of the 12 tribes? We will destroy everything that you are and know to protect him and bring him home right now. You're obviously just acting like you're completely unaware of the possibility that your servant Menashe has obviously framed us. So I'd rather just tell you personally so you know that I know, because I don't want to embarrass you in front of all your nobles. Furthermore, you made us, you forced us to bring our brother down against our will. Even if let's say that he did steal it and he needs to be punished. Well, guess what? You should judge him according to the law in our native land, which is that if a person steals something and he can return the item he stole, then he can fulfill his punishment of stealing by returning it. And he can return it. Also, let's say you want to judge him according to the harshness of your own land and your own penalties, and you want to make him your slave. Well, guess what? Why would you make? We never promised. When we said that we'll be your slaves, I said that we're going to be your slaves. I didn't say that we're all going to be your slaves. That's what Menashe is making a mistake. Let me speak to you, because Menashe keeps mistranslating everything I say. No, I said we're going to be your slaves, as in, if we have to be your slaves for the rest of our lives from stealing because we stole from you, we're going to switch off. Binyamin's not going to stay here. I'll be your slave for a year, and then after a year, my brother Reuven will come down and he'll replace me. After another year, brother Shimon will come down and replace him, and we'll be your slaves for the rest of our lives. But Binyamin's no way he's staying here, not even for a second. How could we do that? You knew that we didn't bring Binyamin down here in the first place because his other brother's gone. He's the only brother from my dad's soulmate wife, Rachel. He's the only one left. He wouldn't let him come down in the first place, which is why we were just 10 of us in the first place, because he was so tightly bound up with my father. That's how close they are. He couldn't even bear to let him go down to Egypt to get food when we're all starving. Okay? So now you want to tell me that he's going to stay? No, there's no chance we're going to let him stay. So please let me speak myself directly into your ear so we don't get mistranslated by your servant Menashe. As you can see, this conversation is going to touch on sensitive and ambiguous points. So it's important that I speak to you directly and not your servant Menashe, so this doesn't happen again. For instance, I said, you're like Paro. Well, that could mean multiple things. Paro is a notorious homosexual, so it could mean that I'm calling you homosexual. You may have such designs on our brother Binyamin, because as we all know, you were once a slave, we heard, and you were chosen by Paro because of your great looks. Maybe he had the same designs on you, you have the same designs on our brother. Also, originally Paro promised, he made a law that no slave is allowed to be in a position of power, and he immediately broke that law and made this slave, you, into his viceroy. So I could mean you're just like Paro, you're just wishy-washy. You have all his bad traits. You're like Paro and having all his bad traits. Also, you should know that the previous Paro kept our grandmother Sarah against her will. And he was stricken with leprosy. So watch yourself. Binyamin's mother also passed away because of my father's inadvertently cursed her. And she died because of it. What do you think is going to happen to you if my father finds out about Binyamin? He's going to curse the heck out of you. And you're done for if he says anything negative about you. You're just going to drop dead on the spot. Watch yourself. And finally, you're just like Paro to me. If I unsheath my sword, I will not stop until I've killed you and Paro. So be very, very careful what you decide to do right now, my friend. And then, Yosef, after all these threats and veiled threats, he gave the signal to Menashe, his son. And Menashe stamped the ground and made an earthquake. And Yehuda was like, this man is so unbelievably strong. That's only a strength that you see in the family of my father. What's going on here? Judah responded with a war cry that was so spiritually powerful that Dan, his brother, he had a son named Hushim, and he was in the land of Canaan at the time. He heard it. And with the twinkling of an eye, he used spiritual powers to run or transport right beside Judah. And they both let out war cries together that were so spiritually powerful that it made two cities just completely destroyed, and 300 Egyptian aristocrats, their faces were contorted in terror for the rest of their lives. The other brothers saw what was going on, so they decided to join in. They started stamping the ground and they made an earthquake. And this is what it says, that Paro heard it from his throne, and Yosef fell off his area and throne. And then Joseph became frightened because he saw Judah was about to just destroy the world in his rage. What he saw was blood streaming from Judah's right eye. Some even say that it was streaming out of two eyes. When he became angry, he had a hair in the middle of his chest which would stick out through all 5 garments. And then copper would start forming on his chest, and he would tear it off and chew it and spit it out. The world was about to just end because Judah was going to just destroy everything. And he grabbed his sword to unsheath it, and he couldn't take it out. And he knew at that point that the man before him was an absolute saint because he was incapable of drawing his sword against him. So that's when he entered the following super elaborate final plea to release Binyamin. He retells the whole story. He recaps everything like a lawyer. My lord, you asked us originally, what are we doing here? We told you we're here for food. Then you asked us, no, you're spies. You accused us of being spies. So we said, no, we're not spies. We're normal people. We live in Canaan. We've got a dad who's an absolute tzaddik. We've got one brother who's gone, and we have another brother who's with my dad. I mean, what do you want us to tell you? We're not spies. You accused us of being spies to such a degree that you then told us, okay, if you really have this father and this brother back home, well, then bring that brother down here. We said, my lord, he stayed back home for a reason. We can't do that. We can't bring him down here. He's very close to my father. My father won't let him go anywhere. That's why we came down by ourselves. But you insisted. So we went back home. We begged my father. I ended up taking an oath that basically I'm going to be excommunicated forever in this world and the next. I won't have any olam haba, no heaven for me. I'm going straight to hell if I don't bring back my brother, Binyamin, who you forced us to bring down here against my father's will. And the reason we didn't want to do that is because my father will die of grief and end up killing you and other people out of an inadvertent sin if he doesn't come back with me at the moment that he sees that he's not back with me. That's why we didn't want to bring him in the first place. And now you're telling us you're going to hold him here and we have to go home and without Binyamin. That's impossible. Remember the whole story, how I just told you that we couldn't bring him down here in the first place? Yeah, guess what? We can't go home without him. That's not possible. Yosef responded, brother, please, enough with the dissertations. Why are you talking so much? You talk more than all your brothers. Like, if I didn't stop you right now, you would go on all night. I've never seen anyone just debate all the, like, you will never, you'll go till the morning like this. You just keep debating all day. He's like, true, I did say a lot, but guess what? I'm going to repeat the story again. You know what happened? I promised my dad, I can't bring my brother back, etc., etc. And he kept going again. He said the whole thing over one more time. I'll stay here, and you can have me as a slave. Okay, I'm way stronger. I'll cut the wood. I'll draw the water. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I'm skilled at a lot of stuff. I'm a good warrior. Okay, I'll stay instead. Okay. So Yosef was like, okay, well, how about this? If you're so concerned about this sinning thing to your dad and making your dad all upset, you told me the story about your brother earlier, about how you sold him into slavery. Why weren't you concerned about that? I used my chalice, my divination chalice, to determine you sold him into slavery for almost nothing. Where was your mercy and love for your brother when you did that? You care so much about your dad. What about your brother? And not only that, but you don't care about your dad either. You lied to your dad that day and told him he was killed by a wild beast. You don't care about your dad either. And Yehuda was devastated, and he just started crying and so, Hashem, I'm sorry. Judah had no choice at this point. He saw that Yosef was not willing under any circumstances to let Binyamin go. So he told Naphtali, who was super fast, he's like, I want you to go now. Check how many thoroughfares there are in Egypt. So in the twinkling of an eye, he came back and he's like, there's 12 thoroughfares. He said, fine, I'm going to destroy 3 thoroughfares. The rest of you brothers, you destroy the rest each, one each. Don't leave anybody alive. Destroy everything. I don't care. The brothers replied, Judah, this is the capital of the civilized world, Memphis, in Egypt. If you destroy this, you're basically destroying the entire civilized world. This isn't Shem. We can't just destroy the world. God doesn't want that. So Joseph, going for plan B, was like, looked around, saw there's a massive stone piece of marble as like a decoration. So 400 pounds, picks it up in one hand, tosses it up, catches it in the other, sets it on the ground, and pulverizes it into gravel. Joseph looks at him and he doesn't even flinch. He's like, signals to Menashe. And Menashe does the exact same thing with another stone that's the exact same size. He's like, you think you're special and strong? You think there's no one as strong as you? Yeah, right. We have men easily as strong as you in Egypt. Yehuda was like, give me back my brother or I will destroy this entire city now. Joseph was like, such dedication you have for your brother. Where was this dedication when you sold your other brother into slavery? Why don't you just go tell your dad that Binyamin was killed by a wild beast like your other brother? Shimon chimed in. He's like, you know what? I don't like this guy. I don't like this city. I don't like anything about this. Guys, let's go up, climb the mountain, and we can toss down some boulders and destroy the whole thing from there. Yosef saw that his brothers were dedicated with all of their energies to bringing back Binyamin, and they weren't going to stop. So he signaled to Menashe to bring the entire army to protect him because he knew they were about to go into a fury and just destroy everything, and he had to stop them. So Menashe brought in a huge army, martial artists that had no need for weapons, horsemen, 10,000 soldiers. And Judah saw everything and just started laughing like a psycho and was like, you think I care about any of this? Hashem is going to listen to me. I have a relationship with Hashem, and Hashem loves me, and I'm working for God. He will protect me, and He will avenge me, and I don't care about anything that you do. You can bring 1,000,000 martial artists. And with that, he started doing his war cries again, and everybody fled, and even women all over the town miscarried. At that point, Judah ordered Manasseh to hold Judah, and when he touched him, all his anger and all his power immediately subsided. He was unable to do anything physical when Manasseh touched him, and that's when he was like, what's going on? This has to be someone from my father's family who has the power to subdue me. Finally, Joseph said, okay, you can take Binyamin on condition that you bring me his brother that you talked about. Judah and all the brothers were like, what are you talking about? He's gone. We don't know where. You know that he was sold as a slave. He's probably dead. And he said, oh, you think he's dead? And this is where we get into an interesting halacha, which is very common sense. If someone hasn't seen you in a long time, then you have to prepare them for you. You can't surprise them because they could die of shock. So this is the genius plan that Joseph did. He said, your brother? You think your brother's dead? Yeah, right. He's my slave. I can call him right now. They're like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll call him right now. Joseph, come here now. Joseph, son of Jacob, come here right now. Your brothers are here. I'm going to introduce you to them. And they were looking around like, where is he? And he was like, yeah, he's coming right now. Joseph, Joseph. Oh, you don't see him? You don't recognize Joseph? Joseph's here right now. I am Joseph. Is my father alive? Wow, I got excited. A few things happened before he revealed himself. First, he kicked everybody out, so it was just him and his brothers. Then, he was alone because he didn't want to embarrass his brothers in front of everybody. Now that he determined that his brothers actually were willing to fight for Binyamin and they loved him, he realized that he could reveal himself to them. Now that he was alone with his brothers and he didn't want them to die of shock when he revealed that he's Yosef, he had a plan. He said, Judah, you guys told me that your brother is dead. Are you certain about that? He said, yes, Your Honor, of course. He's dead. He's like, how can you be sure? You sold him as a slave, didn't you? He said, yes. He said, okay, well, maybe he's still alive. In fact, I know he's still alive. He's my slave. I'm going to call him right now. Joseph, Joseph, son of Yaakov, come out here right now and talk to your brothers. They were looking around. They were waiting for him. And as soon as Joseph saw that they were ready, he said, I'm Joseph. Is my father alive? The brothers, upon hearing this, felt so bad they died of grief. And Hashem actually had to resurrect them on the spot so that they could respond and keep living. They had no idea how to answer. They were so grief-stricken and confused and bewildered. They couldn't even answer the simple question, is my father still alive? They literally died on the spot. And it's that type of shame and awareness that we're going to have when we die. Hashem's going to be like, did you give tzedakah? Why'd you talk in shul? Were you nice to people? Were you generous? Did you work on yourself? Why did you give a loan to that guy and take the collateral when you knew he didn't have any collateral to give and it was really harming him? That you should have let him have the collateral while he took the loan. So it's all these types of questions that we're going to be like, and Hashem's going to be like, Ani Hashem. We're going to be like, oh my God, you gave me life and all the brachas and every single part of my life and every single blessing you gave me was directly from you so that I could do something and give it back to you, essentially give it back to the world and make the world a better place with it, and I just used it selfishly or didn't use it at all. He's going to be like, it's the same thing. Ani Yosef is going to be Ani Hashem. We're just going to be like, we're going to go up to Hashem, already dead, and then we're going to die again. We're just going to be like, ah! Okay, and then after this, Joseph was like, don't worry, guys. I have faith in Hashem still. I'm not mad at you at all. And I'm not going to tell Binyamin didn't hear this whole conversation, by the way. Binyamin was locked away, so he couldn't hear it because Binyamin was unaware. But Binyamin was very young at the time that Joseph was sold, and he wasn't with the brothers when he was sold. So he was also sort of grief-stricken with his father for all these 22 years. So Yosef, in his compassion for his brothers, kept Binyamin locked away this entire time for this whole conversation. And then he told his brothers, he's like, hey, don't worry, I love you guys. I don't hold you guys accountable, I don't hold you guys in contempt in any way, shape, or form. I love you. You're my brothers. I want you guys to move down here. I want you to go get dad. I'm going to give you a bunch of wealth and you can have a bunch of property here. And I want you guys to live here. You guys should all move down here, bring dad down here, and let's live the rest of our lives together in happiness and harmony. And I won't tell dad anything. Dad doesn't have to know. Dad can just think that I was, you guys didn't see me that day or something, or you found my tunic and my Technicolor dream coat. We can keep the same story. I won't tell anybody. I won't tell dad and I won't tell Binyamin. Let's go. And they're like, oh my God, you're such a tzaddik. Wow, I can't believe we did everything that we did to you. That's horrible, but let's live our lives. You're right. Okay, we're going to get dad and bring him down here. Then it says a beautiful pasuk in 45:14. It says, Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv vayevk. Binyamin bacha al tzavarav. Joseph fell on the necks, plural, of Binyamin his brother, and he cried, and Binyamin cried on Joseph's neck. With prophetic inspiration, Yosef saw that the temple would be built in the portion of Binyamin, and it would be destroyed twice. And Binyamin saw in Joseph's portion that the tabernacle would be built in Shiloh. He didn't cry for that, but he did cry for all the people that would be killed in the process. Murdered, not killed. They also cried for multiple futures. That's why there's multiple necks, is because they also cried for multiple futures, that there would be multiple exiles, as was dictated to their grandfather Avraham at the Bris Bin Basarim, the Pact of the Halves, when Hashem said, your people, your nation, your descendants will be subjugated to slavery by a foreign nation before they become a free people. Also, it says in Song of Songs, Shir Shirim, written by King Shlomo, Tzavarech ki migdal Hashem, your neck is like an ivory tower. This is a reference to the holy temples, which are compared to a neck. When the temple is standing, the Yidden can raise their heads with a straight neck. But when the temples are destroyed, their necks cannot be raised erect, and they can't raise their head among the nations, and they're scorned. So the brothers went up to get their dad, Yaakov. And when they got there, they sent ahead Naphtali to go tell Sarah, who was this really smart daughter of Asher, to play on her harp a song for Jacob so that he wouldn't get shocked by the news that Joseph is alive. So they told her, play a song and mumble jumble the words of the refrain every time you play it, that your son Joseph is alive and he's the king of Egypt. Just mumble jumble it a few times, then start getting it a little more clear, until you're saying it and it's clear. But make sure it's really tempered so that you don't shock Grandpa, because he will die. And then just play it beautifully, and then we'll come in with all our riches that he sent us up with in the wagons. He heard the news, he understood what was happening, the brothers came in, and his heart still skipped a beat when they told him what's going on, that his son Joseph is still alive. And he's like, all right, let's go down there. I have to see my son before I die. So then it says that there were a bunch of souls that came down with Jacob to Egypt. Few anomalies here. One was Shaul ben HaKananis. What does that mean? Shul, the son of a Canaanite woman. It was actually a reference to Dinah, who had been violated by Shechem. Also, it says, Bnei Yehuda er be'onan, Shelah v'Feretz v'Zarach. Feretz and Zarach were his sons from his daughter-in-law, Tamar. Vayamas er be'onan be'eretz Canaan. And that's because they were, and why does it list Er Onan, even though they died because of the sin that they did with Tamar, is because Feretz and Sarach were the mystically reincarnated sons of Er and Onan. If you count all the names in this list of names right now, it'll be actually 69. Some say that the 70th is Yocheved, who was actually conceived in Canaan but was born the day they moved. Still others say it was actually Hashem that was the 70th. And that's why Hashem says, I'm going to go down to Egypt with you. And this is Taka Raya, that Hashem's with us in the lowest of the low. All you have to do is say, thank you, Hashem. I know you're here with me, and let's get out of this together. I love you, and thank you for this opportunity. You must have faith in me. The day you're born is the day that Hashem decided that the world can no longer exist without you. Every day he gives your neshama back. Every day he says, you can get through this. You can do it. Whatever you're going through, I know I'm going through with you. It's worse for me. I have to put you through it, and I go through it with you. You just have to go through it. Let's get out of here. Let's go. Let's rise up. Let's rise to the challenge. We can be better. We can achieve. We can break past all of our boundaries. Okay, Jacob was 130 years old at the time, and when he saw his son finally, he recited the Shema. He hadn't seen his son in 22 years. He was grief-stricken for 22 years in mourning, and the first thing he did when he saw his son was he said, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. He was probably ecstatic and extremely emotional and wanted to hug and kiss his son, and he channeled all of that emotion into the Eibishter, into his relationship with Hashem, because he knew that every single thing that he's given on this planet is from Hashem, and to develop his bitachon and his relationship with Hashem. So he devoted that super intense emotional moment to Hashem, and then he hugged and kissed his son. Then he went and saw Paro, and Paro was like, oh my gosh, you look like the oldest person I've ever seen in my life. How old are you? He's like, oh, I'm 130 years old. And the reason I look so old is not because I'm this old, even though I am older than anyone you've ever seen, because at this time, age was people were aging like they do now. People didn't live, 50, 60, 70 was old. And he was 130. He was like the oldest person by far that he'd ever seen. He's like, yeah, but I wouldn't even look this old. The reason I look so old is because I've lived with so much sorrow and grief. It's ridiculous, okay? Imagine your chosen son disappearing for 22 years. That's just the beginning. Like, yeah, I look old because of all that. Jacob saw that Og, Melech HaBashan, was standing there as one of Paro's advisors. He's like, oh, you're the giant Og, aren't you? You're the one that told my grandfather Abraham that he was a sterile donkey and he wouldn't have any, or a sterile mule, and he wouldn't have any kids. Huh, look at us now, buddy. And at that time, Og was like, I hate this guy. We were like, dude, evil eye is all you want, bro. We've been evil-eyed our whole existence. Like, you're not even the first person to do this, and you definitely won't be the last. Yishai Lehman is going to be talking on YouTube one day. He's going to get some evil eyes. Like, you're chump change, homie. So, and then basically Hashem was like, all right, yeah, you can't be evil-eyeing my boy Yaakov, Avinu, Yisrael. You kidding me? You're death sentence. You got death sentence right then. Okay, and then the famine became extremely intense after this, and Joseph got all the money from everybody because he was the only person with bread, and he had such an incredible stash of wealth and precious metals that he hid them in 4 places. And it's a teaching from our sages that one of them was found by Karach, and the other one was found by this evil, I think, Roman king Antoninus, who both of them were famed for their wealth. And then there's going to be 2 left over that are still unfound that will be for the Messianic age. And the Jews lived happily ever after in a place called Goshen, which was somewhere down there by Egypt or in Egypt. And they just became fruitful and multiplied and had a great life for the next 17 years or so. Which brings us to our next chapter. Our next portion, Parshas Vayechi.